Reconciliation is another big issue that you are discussing right now with House Republicans, and I'm wondering, this is the spending bill, right, that the simple majority in the Senate would have to approve to get around the 60 vote requirement. And so I'm wondering, how satisfied are you with the speed of this process? And I know the Senate and the House have agreed on a budget framework now, but there are some senators who want more budget cuts. Where are you within that conversation?
Well, let me start at the last part of the question. I'm certainly among those that want more budget cuts. We've got to rein in our out-of-control spending. We've got to tackle our deficit and debt because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. And Joe Biden and the Democrats went on a spending spree that was reckless and irresponsible. And the interest in our debt is now bigger than our entire military budget, our entire defense budget. That is dangerous. And so we need some real leadership to rein in that spending. I'm fighting to do as much of that as possible. On reconciliation, you know, when you talk about something like budget reconciliation, that sounds like Washington gobbledygook. The one thing that is important for people to know, it's what you mentioned, is that budget reconciliation is the main exception to the Senate filibuster. The Senate filibuster is the ordinary rule that you need 60 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. We only have 53 Republicans, which means you would need 7 Democrats. Here's the problem. If you're trying to cut taxes, you can't get 7 Democrats. If you're trying to secure the border, you can't get 7 Democrats. If you're trying to rebuild the military, you can't get 7 Democrats. If you're trying to unleash American energy, you can't get 7 Democrats. So we're moving through budget reconciliation. We're going to do all of that. I believe we'll get it done. You know, November, the election was a mandate. It was a mandate from the voters. They reelected President Trump in overwhelming fashion. Of the 7 swing states, President Trump won all 7. They gave Republicans a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate. In my race, as you know, my reelection was a $250 million race. It was the most expensive Senate race we've seen in the history of Texas. I was Chuck Schumer's #1 target. We ended up winning by 9 points and 1 million votes statewide. And you know what I'm most proud of? We carried Hispanics by 6 points statewide. That's unprecedented. It's never happened. The Rio Grande Valley, which has been bright blue for 100 years, we flipped the valley red. That's generational change for Texas, and now with that mandate, we've got to deliver on it. And so reconciliation, it's going to be messy, it's going to be a battle, but I'm confident we'll get it done because we owe it to the voters to deliver on what we promised.
You talked about the $36 trillion debt.
Yes.
Can the country afford the tax cuts, which could amount to $4.5 trillion, right, over a certain period of time, obviously?
Well, let me be clear. So the tax cuts, the $4.5 trillion, is just maintaining the current tax rates right now. So the $4.5 trillion is a made-up number. We have tax rates right now today, and Washington accounting says if we have the identical tax rates next year that we have right now, that somehow costs $4 trillion. That is nonsense. It's based on a fiction that the tax cuts will expire. Now, they were written into law to expire, so what was written into law is starting next year we would have a $4 trillion tax increase. We're going to get rid of that, but not having a $4 trillion tax increase is not the same thing as a $4 trillion tax cut. And here's my view. My #1 priority is jobs. And if you want jobs, you want low taxes and low and reasonable regulations. Texas gets that. That's what we do. At the federal level, I want to see the tax cut as big and bold as possible because I want to help families, I want to help individuals, and I want to help small businesses, job creators, because the more jobs that are created, the more prosperity we have, the more people that are lifted out of poverty, and also the more revenue the federal government takes in because with a booming economy, tax revenues go up even when you bring tax rates down.